Our next speaker is a young lady, native of Limerick. She completed a Master's of Business Administration, and after she completed it, she went to work in Haiti as a volunteer. And while in Haiti, she set up the Martin de Porres literacy scheme for the young people. And she also set up a grassroots St. Vincent de Paul organization, so those who had could help those who haven't. She came back to Dublin then, and she's worked for the last 4 years with the pro-life campaign. And she's still a director of the Sacred Heart Hospital in Haiti. And she does great apostle of mercy, very gentle person. And she's, as I said, she's involved in the pro-life campaign, and she's going to speak on the 8th Amendment. So please put your hands together for Miss Denise Kelly.
Good morning. So my name is Denise Kelly, and as Don mentioned, I work full-time now with the Pro-Life campaign here in Dublin, and I'm honoured for the invitation to speak with you today. And just to give you a little background information about myself, I'm from a small village called Grana in County Limerick, and I grew up with my parents and 2 brothers, 1 sister, and a large extended family, so we had tons of cousins, aunts and uncles around growing up. So our house was always very busy, and I remember seeing my parents interact and care for people, neighbours and strangers, and others that might be considered, to be kind of unsavoury characters in the eyes of the world, but I saw them always treat them with dignity and respect. And it's the same treatment they give to everybody else, and it stuck with me. And I think it's as a result of that I've always had a strong sense of the value and uniqueness of every person, and a desire to see everyone treated equally and fairly. Stories of people living in famine and war stayed with me as well, and I felt drawn to become involved and help in some way. So I knew I was privileged to live in a nice house with more than enough food every day and the opportunity of a great education. But I felt a responsibility to share it somehow, and the question niggled in my teens. I remember wondering, what could I do? My grandmother brought me on a pilgrimage to Medjugorje when I was in my first year of college, and I would have preferred to have gone somewhere else on holiday, but I went with her because she asked me. And I did believe in God, and I went to Mass with my family on Sundays, sometimes reluctantly, but this experience of God and the church during this week was different. I came home knowing without any doubt that God exists, because I had experienced His almost overwhelming love and His mercy for me and for every other person. Not a general love, for us as a group, but a personal love for each individual. And God's love cannot be measured or compared in human terms, because it's so much more than that. It's more than the best of us could ever imagine. He says to the prophet Jeremiah, and to each of us, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I consecrated you." He knows us better than we know ourselves. And in Psalm 139, there's a beautiful expression of how God is the author of life. "For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. Your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them as yet existed." And so the church teaches that every person, each and every one of us, from the very beginning of our lives at conception, has an indisputable right to life, regardless of the stage of development, the condition, the circumstance. There is no distinction of nationality or race or color or age or illness. Each and every person has a right to live and not to have their lives taken from them. We don't have to be Christian to know this. It's an inherent value. Being pro-life simply means that we recognize that every person is equal. Nobody has greater worth than another, whether male, female, black, white, sick, healthy, born or unborn, toddler or elderly. From the moment we're conceived, we become a member of the human race. A new, unique, irreplaceable person comes into existence at that moment. The unborn child is a separate entity to their mom, with their own body, blood type, own unique DNA and fingerprints. And it's incredible that even our eye color and hair color are determined at conception. All that the little person needs is food and shelter and time in order to grow and develop. And they are the same needs that the rest of us have journeying through life. In January 2002, while studying for a master's in Fairfield in Connecticut in the States, I went on an outreach trip to Haiti. Haiti is a small country in the Caribbean. It's about 1/3 of the size of Ireland, but it takes about 3 times as long to drive from one side to the other because of the road conditions. And their population is about the same as Ireland. It shares the island of Hispaniola with the Dominican Republic, and Jamaica and Cuba are the nearest neighbors. Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere and one of the poorest in the world. The average income there is less than $2 a day, and that's for those that are working. During that short visit, I fell in love with the Haitian people, and I decided to go back to live there full-time after graduation. I spent 4 years living at Sacred Heart Hospital in the town of Milo in the north of the country, working at the hospital and initiating various projects, including the literacy program, St. Martin de Porres, for children, and a national training and development program for St. Vincent de Paul grassroots groups, so that they could provide better services to the poorest of the poor in their own communities. Many of you will have heard of Haiti because of the devastating earthquake of January 2012, in which 220,000 people lost their lives and over 300,000 people were injured. 1.2 million approximate were left homeless. Sacred Heart Hospital, my home from home, became the hospital where the earthquake victims with the most serious injuries were taken. Over the space of a few days, the hospital expanded from 63 beds to over 400, with large army tents giving shelter to the injured. Unfortunately, it was necessary for hundreds of amputations to take place in order to save lives, and it was a harrowing experience for all involved. One story of hope came with the idea of one group of volunteers who set up a prosthetic lab in a converted 60-foot container, and they began immediately to measure children and adults for prosthetic limbs. Team after team of doctors and physios and regular volunteers came on rotation from the US, Canada, and quite a few from Ireland. Whenever we needed a specific medical professional, within a day or two, I'd get an email from that specific medical professional that was needed, asking if they could come and help. There wouldn't be time today to tell you of all the goodness shown by people and the miracles experienced in the midst of that almost unbearable tragedy. The Haitian people are the most resilient and faith-filled that I've ever met, and I'm still very grateful for all that I learned from them, especially about what is important in life and what it means to have faith and hope in the midst of trials and suffering. I still oversee and support that literacy centre in Milo, and with the help of friends, over 70 children are attending regular school, having gone through the literacy program. My overall aim in Haiti was always to use my small experience and skills to help them to help themselves. It's a relatively short time that we spend on this earth, So the best way we can possibly spend that time is taking care of each other, especially the most vulnerable. Our lives are more fulfilled when we do that and when we value the gift of life itself. Currently in Ireland, the youngest and the most vulnerable members of our community, unborn children, are under serious threat. I'm sure you are well aware of the discussions taking place at the moment regarding the Eighth Amendment to our Constitution. For those who may not be familiar with our laws, let me briefly tell you about the Eighth Amendment, Article 43.3 of our Constitution. It's Ireland's right to life amendment, and it prohibits abortion while allowing all necessary treatment for mothers in pregnancy, and that's very important. There is a misconception sometimes that pro-life people put the unborn baby before the mother, and that of course is grossly untrue. The Eighth Amendment says that both of their lives have equal value and that both deserve to be protected. If the mother's life is at risk, doctors in Ireland provide every necessary treatment and they do all they can to save her life. If the baby dies as a result, then it's a tragedy and they've lost one of their patients, but their intention was not to take the life of the baby. It was to treat the mother. That is the difference with abortion. Abortion deliberately targets the life of the baby and intends to end that life. This distinction is vitally important. Ireland's pro-life laws have served as an inspiration to the rest of the world. We have shown that it's possible to prohibit abortion and still be a world leader in safety for pregnant women. It was the founding members of the pro-life campaign, the organization I'm proud to be working with, that were the main pioneers in bringing forward the referendum in 1983 that enshrined the Eighth Amendment in the Constitution. Maybe some of you here today were also involved in that campaign in 1983, and if you were, I want to thank you for being part of such an amazing effort that has resulted in tens and thousands of lives being saved. Those who are campaigning to repeal or remove the Eighth Amendment are basically calling for the right to life of the unborn child to be taken away. Most of the leading campaigners for this, when they're pressed, they make no secret of the fact that they support abortion up to birth being made legal. Others say they just want abortion legalized in certain circumstances, and they categorize which human lives should be protected and which ones they feel should be excluded. But the clear lesson from other countries is that once the principle is conceded that you can take the life of the unborn child in one circumstance, it is only a matter of time until the grounds are expanded to include more and more situations. We have seen what has happened in history all over the world when some human beings take it upon themselves to decide on the value of others. That's why we have to work really hard to protect the Eighth Amendment. Pope John Paul II, now Saint John Paul the Great, wrote frequently on the value of every human life. He said in Evangelium Vitae, it is impossible to further the common good without acknowledging and defending the right to life, upon which all the other inalienable rights of individuals are founded and from which they develop. Only respect for life can be the foundation and guarantee of the most precious and essential goods of society, such as democracy and peace. In other words, without the right to life, all the other rights are meaningless. So what does this mean for us today in Ireland? As I said a few moments ago, tens of thousands of Irish citizens are alive today, thanks in one way or another to the constitutional protection for the unborn child. If we stop and think about this for a minute, it's a stunning reality. It is most definitely a reason to celebrate the Eighth Amendment and not to attack it. It is very likely that someone saved by the Eighth Amendment is in the hall here today. We're in contact with families all the time who say that their child wouldn't be alive today if the Eighth Amendment hadn't been here. Several of them, now new members of the pro-life campaign, have spoken publicly in recent months telling how, when they were pregnant and considered abortion, the time it took them to book the abortion in England was the time they needed to change their minds and keep their babies. Today, they cannot believe that they ever thought about abortion, as their son or daughter means the absolute world to them. These stories deserve to be at the very front of the present debate. We need to gently but very firmly point this out to members of the media who more often than not ignore pro-life stories. The effects of abortion, both physical and psychological, are rarely discussed in the debate. Again, this has to change. Some of our members experienced abortion in the past and they deeply regret the decision. These brave women, such as those involved with the group Women Hurt, are working to try and get the message out that abortion is never the answer. The group Women Hurt are raising awareness and are reaching out to women who regret their abortions and want to talk to someone about their experience. Compassion must underpin everything we do and how we deal with people who have been through abortion and who may be suffering. Indeed, some of the women who are the most ardent campaigners for so-called abortion rights today may be hurting. We should pray for healing for all women in that situation. We also work with parents of children with life-limiting conditions who felt pressured to abort their child, but they managed somehow to withstand the pressure and gave the gift of life to their son or daughter, who in some cases only lived for a few minutes or hours. We're very proud in the pro-life campaign to support a group of families called One Day More, who provide support to other families with unborn babies diagnosed with life-limiting conditions. There are other wonderful groups like Every Life Counts who do similar work to One Day More. You may have seen or heard the shocking statistic that 90% of unborn babies diagnosed with Down syndrome in England and Wales are aborted. In Iceland, 100% of unborn babies diagnosed with Down syndrome are now aborted. It is very hard to believe these figures, yet shockingly they are true. Denmark has set a goal now to be Down syndrome free as a country by 2030. There are no words really to describe how frightening and inhumane these policies are. But the next time you hear Ireland's 8th Amendment criticised, remember these statistics and speak up for the life-saving 8th Amendment. Imagine the good that could result if all of those campaigning to remove the 8th Amendment from our Constitution focused instead on campaigning for better services for moms that find themselves pregnant and without much support. There is so much good work being done already to improve perinatal hospice care, for example, to assist families who receive sad news that their babies have life-limiting conditions. As a country, we should be building on this great work that is happening to enhance the lives and outcomes for children and adults with Down syndrome. Surely this is where our focus should be as a society, rather than trying to dismantle the 8th Amendment. When people talk about the right to choose abortion, they leave out the fact that the unborn child is given no choice. They leave out the fact that before the abortion happens, women are often told that their unborn child is just a clump of cells, only to realize later that the procedure actually ended the life of their beautiful, unique, and unrepeatable child. We are restricted every day in society with regard to the choices we can make, particularly if they will harm other human beings. For example, drinking and driving or wearing seatbelts. The issue at stake in the modern evaluation of human life is the loss of the realization of what it means to be a person. To be a human being is to be a human person. Even if the new life is considered inconvenient or unwanted, the new little person is of great value and dignity, and it should not be the choice of another person to take that life. So what can we do? At a World Youth Day in the United States, Pope John Paul II said to young people, Place your intelligence, your talents, your enthusiasm, your compassion, and your fortitude at the service of life. He didn't just address his words to young people, he addressed them to each of us. I would ask you not to adopt an attitude of, what difference would my efforts make? Your efforts could make all the difference in the world. It has happened more than once that we've received a call from someone who got one of our leaflets in their door, and they called us to say that it has helped save a life, or it helped impact a conversation that was taking place at the time where somebody might have been considering an abortion. What an honor and a privilege to be part of a movement where something so amazing can happen. All of our actions make a difference, and in ways that we may not know in this life. If there's ever a time for each of us to become more involved and more informed, it is now. I want to thank everyone here who's already supportive of the pro-life movement, either through volunteering or offering financial support. Without all the volunteers all across the country, we wouldn't be in a position to continue this work. But what happens in the coming months now is going to shape the kind of Ireland that we live in for generations to come. So please commit to playing a part, however small. There is a well-known phrase that it is better to light a candle than curse the darkness. And it's clear to me that we can never doubt the power of one person's actions. It's part of our duty as Christians to defend the weakest and to work for a culture that respects human life in our particular time and place. This will ultimately involve witnessing with our lives and our interactions with others, respectfully and patiently, speaking the truth with love and, of course, much prayer. Ireland has always been known as a welcoming society. Let's not lose that beautiful aspect of our nation that values every person regardless. I strongly urge you to visit the Pro-Life Campaign stand during the break and at lunchtime and over the next few days. For those of you wondering where it is, go straight out the door into the exhibition hall, and we're down the first aisle, straight down the first aisle on the right, and we have a big 8 balloon for the 8th Amendment, so you'll see us there, and please come and chat with us. And I'm just going to finish with the words of Mother Teresa that she wrote in our visitors book in the Pro-Life Campaign office when she visited in 1993. And she wrote, "Let us remember that every child at its very conception is created for greater things, to love and to be loved." Thanks for listening.